So the inspiration for this those like old car things you used to do, the
The
joyride?
joyrides, yeah, that was the rebrand of it, and
Yeah.
yeah, so like
I've
joyrides
always
was
thought those were
fun, and
cool.
yeah, and it was exciting, and obviously there's a ton of moving pieces with that, but that kind of like just overwhelmed me because I'd have to
Oh,
get the
did it?
car ready, I'd have to
Oh.
constantly like put suction cups on the windshield, make sure it's recorded, and then I was like, let's go to the extreme, and I attached like these Shure mics on the side windows of the car, so like you have all these mechanisms and pieces, and it was fun. It was good while it lasted, but at the end, I was just like, man, I'm
It's
so
a
burnt
lot of
out.
work.
Yeah, and so I was like, I never use my living room. So like, let's just set up a studio, and did all the things and went through like two or three phases of just changing everything,
Yeah.
and eventually I had to keep reminding myself like, just keep it simple. And so
Hmm.
that's what I did. So I was like, let's just have some fun with this, and
Okay.
so yeah.
So the props that you've picked, is this intentional? Do these all mean something?
So Kyle Brammer gifted me that bottle of bourbon.
Oh,
Yeah,
dang.
and so I
Is he
found
old enough to buy it?
oh yeah, he's like 31, 32.
Am I thinking maybe I'm not thinking of the right person when you say Kyle
I'll show you a
Brammer?
picture of
Okay, I
him.
was thinking of someone younger, I think.
No, they just had a kid, and
Oh, okay.
Julie,
I know who you're
Jules.
talking. Yeah, they go to my life group. They came once.
Okay,
They
yeah,
literally came once because of the baby.
yeah, yeah. They're really good people. I really
So
love
I don't
them.
really know them
Yeah,
because
they're fun.
okay.
They're fun. But yeah, he gifted me that, and now that was also partial. Like, I did some work for him, and I kind of gave him like a discount. But he was like, "Hey, I'll go and I have a gift for you." So he did that, and then the hockey pucks I found at Goodwill,
Okay.
and I was like, "Well, those are cool because I like hockey, and
Yeah.
they're legit.
Yeah.
Like they're real hockey pucks that they use, and they were $2.50 for both of them." I
Okay.
was like, "You can't beat that."
No.
And that's my Spoons champion trophy.
Did
Two-time
Rachel
champion.
did Rachel get you
She did.
that?
Yep.
That is amazing.
I'm a two-time world champion at spoons. You're
You
welcome.
cheat.
I do not cheat.
You sure as heck
You just got to be
cheat.
quiet and quick
You can't
when you get four of
pick
a
up the
kind.
spoons and throw them off the back net.
No, that is Haley.
No.
That was all Haley. I don't throw nothing except wins. And the skull's just the skull, but then that's my dream car. Chevy Camaro.
Oh.
69 Chevy Camaro.
Okay.
And then yeah, this was like a men's group thing that I was a part or am a part of every 2 weeks, and the demonstration is like your life can sometimes get messy. So then when you just take the minute and settle, then you can see clarity and stuff like that.
Oh, look at
So
that.
yeah,
Creative little
yeah,
metaphor.
it's by Josh Deal. So he kind of leads that. So like 10 of us or so will get together every two
That's
weeks, and
cool.
yeah, it's good. It's good time. It's good for men to connect. Like
Is
men,
that the same group that like Kenny and Gary and or separate?
I believe it's
Because I know
separate.
there's like a couple different smaller
Hmm.
little groups of men that kind of
Yeah, I
get
think this
together
one's
and
separate. We do ours up at Northgate in
okay.
the woods. We'll get a fire going, and we'll do like cowboy steaks and all this stuff. So
Jeez.
yeah, we
I want to
go
be part of the men's group.
we go hard in the food category after our sessions. So it's good. Well, we're getting into this thing, and people don't know who you are. So
Yeah.
give a
Okay.
brief introductory. It's awesome that you decided to take time out of your life
Yeah.
to come and hang out. So
Sure.
fire away.
What do you want to know? I'm
For
Shannon.
what you do, profession,
Okay.
all
Okay.
the things.
I'm Shannon. I am a licensed professional clinical counselor. I've been doing that since 2019, right before COVID hit, which has been a roller coaster
Mm.
ride entering that profession during that time. It's been interesting to navigate that. Um, but it's my second career.
Okay.
So I am also a licensed physical therapist assistant in the state of Ohio.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I've done that for 25 years now.
Wow. Okay.
So I started that in 2000, and that was my primary career. And then pretty much from the time I graduated high school, I've just always been involved in like youth ministry and college ministry. When I was at my home church in Toledo before I moved here,
Mm.
I led when I was in college, I led like they called them cell groups back then.
Yeah.
Like a cell group for college age students.
Mm.
And then I also had like a small Bible study for high school girls. And then when I moved here to Columbus and started going to Northgate, I got involved in the youth ministry. Um, so that was like 2004, 2005. And then I did that up until like 2021, 2022.
Mm.
So just years and years and years. And I just love it. Like that's my passion, that age group, like junior high, high school, college age. And through doing that for so long, like I just really, just the mentoring and the
Mm.
discipling and just giving advice and just being like the big sister, like it just is just my passion. And
Yeah.
through that process, God really started poking at my heart about going back to school to be a counselor.
Mm.
And I'd actually gotten a prophetic word when I was 18 about doing counseling.
Mm.
But at the time, I was an emotional hot mess. I had kind of experienced my own trauma in high school and was not healed from it at all remotely. And it was like put that on the shelf.
Mm.
And just like as the years went on and doing youth ministry and going through my own healing, God just started talking to me about it. And at that point, I was like 13 years into my PTA career and like, made a decent living for a single person, had no debt whatsoever. And it's like, why would I want to do that?
Go back
Why
into
would I want
that
to have to go
and
to grad school
yeah.
and get all kinds of student loan debt? And then like I have to work full time to support myself. I'm
Right.
single. Like, so it was just like, yeah, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever, God. And he just kept poking at it.
Uh-huh.
And my sister at one point was like, well, have you even looked into it?
Yeah.
Like, have you even looked like the process and what you would do and where you would go? And I was like, well, no. And she's like, well, at least do your research and look into it.
Yeah.
And so, like, I found a program that I could get my bachelor's in 2 years, and it was all on Saturdays. So I
Mm.
could keep working full time. It was Ohio Christian. It was in person, but
Okay.
it was in Columbus at
Okay.
Columbus State. And so it was just like I just ran out of excuses
Yeah.
for not
It's like,
obeying
oh,
God,
here we go.
essentially. Like, okay. And so
Yeah.
I did that. And then my master's program was 3 years, which sucked. But I did it through Ashland.
See,
And
for some reason I thought you did like you were in school for like 15
I
years
went
to get
2013 to 2019.
Okay, so it was a good
It
while that
was
you were
6
doing
years.
schooling
Yeah,
and
because
yeah.
my PTA is an associate degree, and you have to have a master's to do clinical mental health counseling.
Wow.
And
Okay.
it's a 3-year master's program.
Okay.
It's not 1 year like a lot of masters. So
Yeah.
it was a
And it's
long
dealing with
time.
clinical health.
Yes,
Like
all
so I'm
mental health.
sure so when
All
you
mental health.
got into the studying that did they like break down like parts of the brain like
Oh
the
yeah.
emotions and all the neurons and
And
how
like what
everything
parts of your
works?
brain control what things.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah. Yeah. I
What's
mean, it's so
that's
fascinating.
to me that's always been
So
fascinating
fascinating.
to see just like because I've seen color graphs before, right?
Yeah.
I've seen like color graphs where like where joy comes from or where happiness or sadness and like and just how the brain articulates itself. It's such an articulating,
Yeah.
very detailed structure to our body. And so what's something that's just like wild about the human brain that you can tell me?
What I find to be the most cool thing about how God designed the brain is that it's never stagnant. It's always growing.
Mm.
Like it is always capable of new growth and change. So no one has an excuse to not become the best version of themselves,
Mm.
to not become who God created them to be. No matter if you've been an addict, no
Mm-hmm.
matter what where your life has taken you, like it's called neuroplasticity
Mm-hmm.
is the fancy word
Neuroplasticity.
for it.
Okay.
But basically that means that your neural pathways, your neurons can change. They can regrow and
Interesting.
redirect. So
So as far
you're
as like being an
so
addict.
like creating new habits, creating new behavior
Mm-hmm.
patterns, growing and evolving and changing. Your brain is capable of that,
Hmm.
and it does it constantly. And
Yeah.
so you're capable of becoming and overcoming.
Okay.
Um,
That's fascinating.
yeah.
Because I think for me at times you can kind of like get stuck in your own roots, if you will, on how you think and process things.
Hmm.
And I was talking with a friend about this today, actually, how we can get so stuck and set in our ways for like stubbornness, But that's actually really encouraging, because if you constantly think about your brain as growing, it can be rewiring and new things can be taken over from the old. It like you kind of don't, like you said, you really don't have a choice.
You
Like
don't have
you
an
don't
excuse.
have an excuse. Yeah, you have a choice, but you don't have
I
an
mean, you can play the
excuse.
victim if you
Right.
want,
Yeah.
or you can be stubborn and
Yeah.
refuse to let God deal with things.
Yeah.
But the reality is, biologically, He has wired us to be able to
To
change and
continue to
grow.
advance and
And so
grow.
when we allow Him to do that healing from the inside out, like spiritually and emotionally, biologically, our body will follow.
Mm.
And I just think that's so
And it
cool.
all starts with the brain.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the thought I just
I
had.
mean,
Like it
to
kind of
me, I feel
starts.
like ultimately it starts with your spirit,
Yeah.
but like, spirit, soul, and body, it's all
Right.
connected. You
Right.
cannot separate your mind, your will, your emotions, your body, your spirit. Like
Right.
it's all intertwined.
Mm.
And so I feel like a lot of one of the things that I have issue with a lot of, like, like the science fields, like
Mm-hmm.
medicine and mental health, um they leave out the spirit, they
Mm-hmm.
leave out the spiritual, they don't have room for that unless you're a Christian.
Right.
But it's all connected. So if you are not also healing your spirit, whether you are a Christian or not, you still have a spirit,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Like, God made you with one,
There's an
whether you
awareness.
acknowledge or
People
not.
people will call them,
It's
mediums
there.
and beings
So
and
there's, if you are bound up spiritually,
yeah.
you're also not going to be able to heal emotionally and physically.
Yeah.
It's, and I feel like until you are healed up spiritually, you're not going to be able to attain full emotional and physical healing either.
Hmm, that's
And
interesting.
like, something that is so fascinating to me also about like the brain and mental health is that um our emotions and our mental health directly impact our physical body as well.
Yeah,
Like stress, anxiety, those things, like science has shown it can actually shorten your lifespan,
that's wild.
make your life shorter. It can make you more vulnerable to like heart attacks and strokes and diabetes and all these physical medical problems
Hmm.
if you don't deal with stress, if you don't deal with anxiety, if you don't deal with depression. And um so you can't separate them. They go together. And I
Right.
think a lot of people try to compartmentalize and separate, and
Yeah.
that's why
There.
I think that's why people stay stuck.
Yeah. There's a author I think I'm not sure if this is her name, but Dr. Caroline Leaf. Are
Yes.
you familiar with her?
Yes. I
So
like her stuff.
she does. Yeah, I was reading one of her books. It's over there somewhere, but I was blown away because she's all about the mental capacity and how the brain operates, and even going down. I think a few years ago, her team made like a massive breakthrough for like cancerous cells and how our brain can unintentionally develop cancerous cells in our body. And so like they did like different stress levels and did like it was a huge thing,
Hmm.
to where a lot of hospitals like nationwide were searching out for her research and stuff. So
Hmm.
but she's a really fascinating person because she breaks down that mind body spirit protocol and talks about how everything is intertwined and how
Hmm.
everything basically collaborates with each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always fascinating stuff when you see people, because what's the title again?
Clinical mental health counselor is the
Is the
degree.
degree.
Licensed professional clinical counselor, LPCC, is the official like state license that I
Okay.
operate under.
Okay. So when you
Yeah.
deal with clients, and again reminding confidentiality,
Yeah.
we don't want to
Not
cause more
putting
issues.
no
Okay.
names out there.
Yeah.
No
So
HIPAA
like
violations here.
in your experience, what do you deal with the most of, and how do you navigate between someone who's wired a certain way or they think a certain way, and then you're also tapping into like their emotional side because you don't want to create more triggers in conversing with someone, but helping them like understand like there's so much of a better version of who you generally want to be, because I think all
Yeah.
people want to be good, and they want to be great at something. So how do you navigate between like how the brain functions, the emotional side, but also the professional side, and doing what you do?
Yeah. So I work for a community mental health agency, but we have a contract with the public schools
Mm-hmm.
in Delaware and Morrow counties, and some in Franklin County as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually work at Delaware Hayes High School full
Okay.
time. So I see high school kids all day. And I'm also actually just got a promotion last fall.
Oh, congratulations.
I'm the coordinator for all of our school services in Delaware City
Oh
schools.
gosh.
So I manage 4 other counselors that work in the other schools within Delaware City.
Okay.
Um, and the biggest things that I see, like in that age population, depression and anxiety are the most common, which I
Yeah.
think most people would probably guess. Um, I have a lot of students that struggle with suicidal ideation,
Ideation.
suicidal thoughts.
Okay.
hmm Um, a lot of like ADHD,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of autism spectrum stuff.
Okay.
Um, a lot of like perfectionistic thinking,
Mm-hmm.
which is a big struggle for like high school kids, and just a lot of identity stuff. Like
Yeah.
that age is where a lot of your identity formation is happening and figuring out who you are.
Right. And then
Um,
you add the stress of school on top of it.
yeah,
I
and
remember high school.
social stuff.
Yeah.
And like when I was in high school, social media wasn't a thing yet.
Mm-mm. There was Facebook or
Not
MySpace.
even Facebook. I
We
didn't
had
even have MySpace. I'm old.
okay.
I'm 45.
Okay. And
But
MySpace was our thing in high school.
but like it's a totally different world navigating high school with the existence of social media. And I
Yeah.
don't think adults fully appreciate that.
Yeah.
Um, it's all out there.
Right.
You can't hide from it.
Right.
And I mean, I'm thankful I didn't have it in high school.
Yeah.
But I think for me, like I have found, so there's a really common, probably the most popular and well-known theory of counseling, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of considered the gold standard for like depression and anxiety
Okay.
symptoms to treat it. And the big thing behind it is that your thoughts and your emotions and your actions are all connected.
Mm.
They all feed each other like a triangle.
Yeah.
And so you really can't have one without the other. Your thought patterns, your mindsets, the way that you view the world and yourself and other people will directly impact your emotions and how you
Mm.
feel about stuff, which will then impact how you act.
Yeah.
So there's an analogy I like to use with my high school kids to help them understand it is like, say you're walking down the hall in high school, you're walking down the hall, you see a group of friends or a group of your peers like hanging out by the lockers, they're laughing, they're joking around. Um, and so you kind of beeline towards them, right? Because they're
Right.
your friends or you know them. And then all of a sudden you start getting closer. Maybe one of them glances up, you make eye contact, they see you coming. And then the next thing you know, like everybody just stops talking and goes silent.
Mm.
Right. And so, like, I asked them, so what's your first thought?
Yeah.
Why did everybody stop talking as soon as I walked up? Are they talking about me? What are they saying? Are they talking smack about me? Like,
Yeah.
do they not like me? And then all of a sudden you feel hurt, you feel betrayed, you feel confused, maybe you're angry, right? And then based on those thoughts and feelings, you decide what you're going to do next,
Right.
right? If you're someone who has no problem with conflict, you might walk right up to them and
Yeah.
you'll be like, why are you talking about me?
Yeah.
Right? And maybe they weren't, but now they're pissed off at you because you're accusing them of doing something they didn't do,
Right.
right? And then it causes a fight, and then they really are mad at you.
Yeah.
Or if you're conflict avoidant like me,
Yeah.
you turn around and just walk the other way and stuff it all down,
Yeah.
which is not good either, right? Or maybe there's a third option where you choose to remain curious
Yeah.
and you recognize, okay, this thought that I'm having, maybe they're talking about me, maybe they don't like me. The reality is that our thoughts are just thoughts. They're not facts.
Right.
Our thoughts are just our interpretation, our perception of what's happening. And those interpretations and perceptions are usually rooted in the past and something that's happened to us before.
Right.
That's caused us to form a core belief based on this past experience, usually a hurt,
Yeah.
right? And so you can ask yourself, is this the truth or is it just a thought?
Mm.
And you can challenge those thoughts. You don't have to accept your thoughts as truth.
Right.
In the Bible, it talks about that,
Mm-hmm.
right? In Ephesians, it talks all about our minds,
Mm-hmm.
taking every thought captive,
Right.
right? So, like, is this the truth? Is there any evidence to back this thought up? How
Mm-hmm.
do I know it's true? Has it ever happened before? If not, why would it happen now?
Yeah.
What's a more likely explanation,
Yeah.
right? And so you can kind of process, talk yourself through, so maybe you're asking yourself, well, how do I know they're talking about me?
Mm-hmm.
Do I actually know they are? Right? This is my friends. Have they ever talked about me behind my back before?
Right.
No. So why would they be now?
Yeah.
What are the odds that they would actually be doing that if they've never done it before? What's a more likely explanation? Maybe they're watching a funny TikTok video and laughing about it, and then the
Right.
video ended, right? Maybe they're talking about something that happened over the weekend,
Mm-hmm.
right? How many times am I walking down the hallway at school, and because someone's walking towards you and you're walking towards them, you make brief eye contact and then you look away and it doesn't mean anything.
Mm.
So maybe your friend happened to look up and catch your eye as you're walking towards them, but it didn't mean they were talking about you because they happened to glance and catch your eye,
Right.
right? And
So
so then you can kind of talk yourself down and realize, okay, like maybe I'm overreacting.
right.
I'm just
Which
gonna
none of us do.
I'm just
None
gonna
of us
walk up to them
overreact.
and find out. Like,
Yeah.
hey, what's so funny? What's going on?
Right.
But so like the fancy word for that is cognitive restructuring. It's basically identifying mindsets,
Yeah.
thought patterns that maybe are not accurate and maybe overreacting, and choosing to challenge those thoughts, take those thoughts captive,
Yeah.
recognize what is the truth, what is not. And then when you're able to do that, your emotions and your actions usually follow suit.
Right.
um and
So you deal a
so
lot with like you it sounds like you do a lot of training or mentoring through like the perception of reality.
mhm,
Like what is actually
mhm.
true? What is actually and how do you become
Right. And where
aware
did these
of
thought
that
patterns come from?
reality? Yeah.
What is this rooted in?
Yeah.
Right? What past experience caused us to believe that this is true in the first place?
Hmm.
And let's heal that area up
Yeah.
so that every time a situation similar happens in the future, we're not automatically believing something that's not true based on that one experience.
Right.
Like, so you're in a relationship and it ends badly and you're
Hmm.
hurt and you're betrayed by that. So then if you start to believe that, you're a guy, so every girl is out to get you, you're never going to have a good relationship, right? Like,
Sweet Lord.
you get in one argument or disagreement in your relationship and immediately, well, that's it, this is
Yeah.
over, right?
Right.
Like, it's these, you know gross overreactions. I was having this conversation with Sarah Bean recently. Like, something that God showed me in my own healing process was that when I get triggered by something, um when I like have like this emotional overreaction to a situation, that it's like, why am I reacting this strongly to this?
Hmm.
Like, this situation does not warrant the emotional response that I'm having, the level of emotional response. That's usually my cue that I need to take it to God and look deeper and see,
Hmm.
where is this coming from?
Yeah.
Like, what area is this touching that isn't healed yet? Because I'm way more upset over this than this situation warrants. So, what's probably happening is not only am I upset over the current situation, but it's triggering hurt that hasn't been healed from maybe multiple situations in the past that are similar.
Right.
And it's all compounded together
Yeah.
like the straw that broke the camel's back. So, it's not really about the current
It's the
situation.
perfect tornado.
Right. But like, so
All you
it's
need is that one
again,
moment.
it's an opportunity to be curious. It's an
Right.
opportunity to take, like, okay, why am I reacting this strongly to this? And like, someone I know, they call it a revealing for healing,
Oh, okay.
right? And I
Yeah.
love that phrase because it's like, okay, like, and I feel like a lot of that stuff, we form these beliefs and mindsets from past hurts and
Hmm.
past traumas that we live our life by and keep us bound up.
Yeah. I love what you said about being curious because I think that's so important as any human being on the face of the earth. Like, I feel like if we stop our curiosity, we're stopping our development, we're
You're
stopping our
stopping your
growth.
growth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that makes me think, like, I grew up at least one short season of my life. I won't say who, but like going through past trauma and experiences, I was told, and I'll just be clear, my mother did not tell me this because she's a saint. But there was a time where
I do love your mother.
I wasn't allowed to ask why. Like, there was a definitive verbal communication to me,
Hmm.
and this individual said, don't ever ask me why again. And that internally, that jacked me up for
Hmm.
probably 15 years of my life, where I stopped asking why. If somebody said do something or somebody said go, whatever, okay, cool. Like, I stopped asking why. And what really got that worked out of me is when I worked at International Paper.
Mm.
Worst company on the face of the earth that make cardboard, corrugated cardboard boxes. I got nothing good to say about them. The workers were great because we formed our own like family. The workers on the floor hated the people at corporate, and God, I hate corporate America. I'm not called to that, and I'm okay with that. But I had lived in frustration and anger at International Paper for so long that it forced me to start asking why to these bosses and to these, even how they structured the plant and how they did
Hmm.
their ridiculous things, the way they did them. It forced me to start asking why. So in that season of my life, there was actually a lot of things that transpired internally that I had grown up with to
Hmm.
go, you know what? I don't want to live this way anymore. Like, I'm going to start asking why. I'm going to start being curious. And honestly, it was
Hmm.
curiosity that led me to have businesses that I have today. Like,
Yeah.
it forced me to get outside of what I had grown up in,
Hmm.
to explore new territories of my life and to not be afraid to ask why. So, like,
Yeah.
now I ask why about everything, and I'm curious about everything. It's one of the reasons why I started a podcast, because I'm just curious to know and ask
Yeah.
the answer or ask the question why. And so when you're dealing with, because it's all teenagers, high school, right? So
Yeah.
you're dealing with hormones, you're dealing with emotional things, and all of the, I mean, that's just the
Yeah.
way the body is designed, right?
Hmm.
So when you're dealing with an intense situation, like what's like a really serious case versus something that's like, oh, probably just an hour with this kid, probably they'll be good.
Right. Um,
Because there's all different intensities,
all
right?
all different. So, and I've experienced the gamut. I've experienced kids who they've just had a breakup and maybe it's their first serious relationship and they're just a hot mess,
I remember my first
right?
breakup.
You know, like,
Yeah.
in a couple months from now, they'll probably have another boyfriend or girlfriend and
Yeah.
they won't even remember it,
Yeah.
right? But for right now, the world is ending.
Yeah.
And, and so there's that,
Right.
that's a very short term situational, right?
Mhm.
Maybe just stress over schoolwork. They don't know how to manage their time. They don't know how to get organized. So they're behind and schoolwork is piling up. So their grades are bad. And then their parents are on their case. And so they're just stressed.
Yeah.
Right. Or maybe they're an athlete. Have a lot of athletes that really struggle with perfectionism
Mhm.
and performance anxiety and just feeling like if they're not measuring up performance wise,
Mhm.
that everyone is going to be disappointed in them,
Yeah.
and that they have to be perfect. They have to
Mhm.
get it perfect in order to be accepted and loved. So that goes back to some mindsets that they're
Right.
believing. So that's maybe going to take a little more work than just someone who's upset over a breakup, right?
Mhm.
But I've also experienced, actually, just 2 months ago, a student who had what we call homicidal ideation. He
Mhm.
was having thoughts of killing others, suicidal ideation, thoughts of killing himself. Specifically, he had a plan of bringing a gun to school and killing others and then killing himself.
Jeez.
The police were involved with that situation.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a pretty serious. And he was also having what we call psychotic symptoms. He was having hallucinations,
Oh my
like
gosh.
seeing and hearing things that weren't there, very paranoid, thinking people were watching him. So that's one of the more serious cases. I had a student who had a dissociative identity disorder, multiple personalities,
Okay.
and a different personality actually presented in our session together once.
Wow.
Typically, what I see at the school is not that severe, but
That
there has been some
those are like once in a blue moon where it, like
in my setting where I
in
work.
okay.
Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
how do you I'm curious to know like if someone has like multiple personalities disorder, whatever what's the medical term again?
Dissociative identity disorder.
Dissociative identity.
DID.
How do you draw that out of them through like your trainings and everything you went to college for and mastered in? How does a conversation go about and even beginning to like because you're obviously you're 100% there to help them. How do you navigate that and draw out like what it is that they're actually feeling?
Yeah. That's a really that particular diagnosis, like I do not claim any kind of special competence in treating it. Like that is definitely a very complex, very specialized you definitely need extra training
Mm,
in like if you're specializing that in that or dealing with that on a regular basis.
mm,
And that's one of those diagnoses that if you have someone that you suspect has that, you're probably consulting with someone who does it
I got you.
like it is a very
Like that's their niche and
yes.
know how to
Yes.
go about it correctly.
It's very commonly develops as a result of childhood trauma.
Okay.
The idea behind it is that it's a defense mechanism. The brain is very smart,
Yeah.
but it tries to protect you and defend you as much as it can from things that you are not able to handle. And so, a child experiencing severe trauma, as a defense mechanism, the brain, that's kind of the theory behind how these multiple personalities start, is that it's a way to compartmentalize what has happened to you,
Okay.
to try and protect you from it, protect the brain from it because it can't process it
Okay.
without having, like a complete breakdown. And so that's kind of in a very brief nutshell,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
a
sure it could
very
get very
complicated process of
complex
where they
and
feel like it kind of comes from. But like, so for me, there's actual like assessments and screeners that you can do to kind of help assess if that's what's happening or not.
mhm.
But initially, it's going to come from what the student, what the client is telling you.
Yeah.
So this particular student, in my case, they were 15, and so they were kind of a little bit old enough to articulate
Mm,
more, and they were the ones who first said,
okay.
that they felt like um that they had multiple personalities, that they're and they give them names. That's very common.
Wow.
This is Fred, and this is the angry personality. When
Okay.
I'm really angry and when I get more violent and aggressive, that's him, right? And then, this is Sally, and this is, they're very distinct characteristics.
So do you think so
Um
I'm curious to know if when people if they begin to give names to different characteristics that are coming out of them, kind of like the is that kind of like how something like that develops? Because like if I go outside, I get
that would be a
angry,
huge
like,
like
oh,
warning sign to me,
Fred
like,
is coming
okay,
out,
we need
and
we need to take a closer look at this.
yeah.
And often it's so fascinating. Like often in the moment, when this, like in the case of the student that I was working with, um, it was very apparent to me when it happened because, and it was only one time, but it was like talking to a totally different person. Like that's how
Night and day
night and
difference.
day different it was. Like the mannerisms, the tone of voice, the language they were using, the things they were saying. Um, it was like you were talking to a totally different person. And um, often what happens is afterwards, like when I asked the student the next time I saw them, they did not remember any of it.
Wow.
Like sometimes in the moment, like they won't remember
That's
what has
wild.
happened when the other personality was like in the forefront,
Like
we might
taking
call it.
over and
Um,
gosh. How does
and
that
and so
affect
the thought is that you have to try and through like reintegrate
Mhm.
the different parts of their personality. Like I said, I do not feel at all competent to treat that. Like
Yeah.
that is intense.
Yeah.
And I know that Karen has dealt with a lot of that in Sozo.
Okay.
Um, and she calls them parts.
Mhm.
But has seen success with Sozo in dealing with that, which is fascinating to me because
Yeah.
then you're kind of combining that spiritual
Right.
element
Into the
in the
physical
healing
part.
process. But
That's so fascinating. Um, Even thinking about, how people can create things in our minds and develop those to be truth. How often, I mean, I feel like and you can obviously talk correct whatever, but I feel like a lot of your conversations in helping people, there really has to be like a truth aspect, like immediately as soon as you open your mouth it has to be truth, and not in that instant, like not a case of curiosity. Like you can be curious, but when
mhm.
you're discussing and talking about things, it's coming from the truth that you know. And so how's that process lay out when you're conversing with people? And how do people,
Yeah,
on top of that, how do people like come to you? Is it like a cycle through your job
like
that you just
specifically what I do at the school.
Yeah.
So usually the school counselors are the gatekeepers.
Okay.
So they will usually identify students through the course of their conversations with them that they
Okay.
identify as struggling with something that is more of a significant mental health concern than
Okay.
just your average, because you're going to have those kids that come down, in tears because they got in a fight with their best friend or there's school drama
Right.
and they're venting to the school counselors. And that's typical for that
Okay.
age and that
Yeah.
development. But in the course of talking to those students, if they're kind of identifying, you know what, there's some deeper rooted stuff here
Yeah.
that they could really benefit from some actual mental health counseling and learning coping skills and how do I manage the big emotions when I have them and
Mhm.
all the things. And so they will send me a referral.
Okay.
They will contact the parents and ask
Are you in
first of all they
contact with the parents?
yes,
Okay, so you're 100% involved in the
you
whole
have to be
process.
because
And
they're a minor. So
yeah.
I
Okay.
have to get parents' permission. At least one parent has to give permission and sign a permission form
Okay.
for me to meet with the student.
And it's the same thing like if they had a guardian and stuff.
Yes.
Just
Whoever
because
their
they're a
legal
minor
guardian
and
is, right? If it's
okay.
grandma, if it's foster care,
Okay.
whoever is their legal guardian, I have to get permission from at least one parent. I have had parents say, no, I don't
Okay.
want you talking to my child. And so then I'm
And
not
you just
allowed.
say, "Okay,
I'm not
that's it."
allowed.
Okay.
Um, Something that's been an interesting wrinkle in this last year, and this is my hot take, and it's probably a controversial for a Christian
Oh, here we
hot
go.
take.
Spitting fire.
Yeah. So there's a lot of students that I talk with at Hayes that identify in the LGBTQ plus community,
Mhm.
right? And there was a recent bill that was passed, a state bill. House Bill 8 was one, and then House Bill 68
Mm.
that was passed last spring, about a year ago. And they were specifically addressing the ability of mental health counselors to talk to clients about those topics
Mhm.
if they're a minor.
Mhm.
That they were requiring, if we were going to address those topics with students, a parent had to specifically give permission for that if they were under 18.
Okay.
Um, my hot take, and again, a very unpopular, probably in the Christian community hot take,
Yeah.
I hated it.
Yeah.
I hate that bill. And it's not because I am in favor of morally whatever any of that.
Mhm.
Like, I believe what the Bible says about all of those things. But my job is to love and to
Right.
lead them to Christ, not to be their judge.
Mm.
And the reality is, in the age demographic of 10-year-olds to 18-year-olds, the second leading cause of death is suicide.
Wow.
In the LGBTQ plus population, it's 4 times higher
Wow.
than the average high school student. So it's already the second leading cause of death because you're a high schooler. It's 4 times higher if you identify in that population.
Wow.
because of judgment, because of lack of support, lack of understanding, lack of whatever.
Yeah.
So if my Christian mandate is to love and lead them to Christ, not to be their judge, to let Holy Spirit do that, they're not going to want anything to do with God or church
Right.
if I'm Bible thumping them,
Right.
first of all.
I hate Bible thumpers. They're the worst.
And if they're dead, they cannot come to Christ and get the healing they need
Mm.
and have the truth revealed to them. Right? So my first priority is to love,
Is to love.
so that they stay alive long enough to experience and encounter Holy Spirit, who is ultimately the person responsible for changing them.
That's intense. That's weighty
Right?
to process from like,
So I will love and I will talk to any of those students about any of that. And if they have a preferred name, I will use it. And if they have preferred pronouns, I will use it. Because I cannot tell you how many of those students I talk to that also struggle with suicidal thoughts because their family and their peers and bad church experiences, I hear it a lot,
oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
have led them to that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to add to that. To me, that's not Christian.
It's
That's
just
not
adding
God's
more weight
heart.
to their chaos.
It's not
and,
God's heart.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't even know how we got on this subject, but
We go everywhere.
I'm very passionate about that. And
Yeah.
I know, again, that's a hot take for Christians and Christian church.
Well,
but,
anybody in general, no matter what side you're on. I love what you said. Like your number one first thing you do is just to love them. And I think that just opens up the whole
right.
process of connection. Because I think ultimately that's what people really want. They want to feel seen. They want to
Yeah.
feel connected. And how do you do that? By just talking with them.
Right.
Like, what are their standards? And I also feel like that stems a lot of place from like just honoring someone. You don't have to agree with them, but you can still honor them.
Right.
So
And you can still treat them like a person who has value.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, they're still created by God, just like me and you.
Yeah.
He still loves them just as much as he loves me and you.
Yeah.
They have value, inherent value, because they are created by God.
Yeah.
Who am I to say they have less value because they have a different belief and lifestyle than me?
Right.
And at the end of the day, if they don't identify as a Christian, it is not fair for me to hold them to a lifestyle standard that they don't adopt as their own.
Yeah.
It's just not.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
So again, unpopular hot take, but that's my hot take.
Yeah. Well, I think it helps too that you're not, I'm sure at some point I'll have somebody random who really doesn't specialize in anything. They're just coming from a place of frustration and anger and all these things. But I think it helps that you have the background to know the statistics of things and how language and conversation and just navigating all of that on a very high professional level versus someone like me, just be like, what's up? Like I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'll talk with you. I'll shoot the bucket with you. I got no problem with that.
Right.
But from a clinical professional standpoint, I did not know those stats. And that is very wild. And I also feel like it adds some, I don't know if healthy pressure is the term I would use, but that definitely adds pressure to remain in that professional state, even when conversing with someone who you may not agree with, but you know what I mean? So like
and the reality is a counselor is not meant to be an advice giver.
Yeah.
It is not my job to push my beliefs onto someone else. Like
Right.
I am supposed to check that at the door.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes that can be hard for people. Because a lot of times I will hear things that go 100% against my personal moral values. I work with students at Hayes who've had abortions. Right. I am fundamentally against that.
Yeah.
I just am. But does that mean that gives me the right to treat them with less than God's love? Because, like, how is that going to help anything?
Right. It just adds to the, like I said, it
like,
just adds
why,
to the chaos.
why in the heck would they want to ever step foot in a church or interact with another Christian again if that's all they're getting?
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's going to push them further away from God, not closer.
Yeah.
Like, I'm interfering with God's ability to meet them where they're at, in a sense.
Right.
Like, if their interactions with me completely close them off to wanting to anything to do with God, like, what the heck am I doing? like I have to answer for that someday.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I don't no, I don't want that on my hands.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I can imagine changing gears a little bit. I can imagine to like again, I feel like the theme of this whole entire session will just be about the brain and intentionality and which I love it. Like it's just I think people can be so afraid to have a conversation if they don't know how to like navigate not direct or control but like really open the doors to have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's my thing is like just being intentional with people, being intentional in a way that surprises them
Yeah.
through the verbal communication of having a conversation. And so when you trained in what you know, been to college, this is what you do 9 to 5, like Monday through Friday job, how do you better yourself in like your personal life with
Mm.
conversations and people? Like, do you sometimes tap into like that work mode when conversing with someone? Is it like a switch you can turn on and off? Like, what's your process with that?
Yeah. I feel like for me, I've learned how to compartmentalize really well,
Mm,
and leave work at work. Um, I work really hard at not putting the counselor hat on when I'm not at work
okay.
and not playing the counselor with friends and family.
Yeah.
Um, and I've even had situations with some really close friends going through some really hard things
Yeah.
that their family and everybody else was telling them what they should do and how they should handle it. And they'll ask me partly because I'm a close friend and partly because I'm a counselor, right? Like
Hmm.
everyone wants a free counselor
Hmm.
advice, right? But like,
Free session, nine
my
ninety
thing
nine.
my thing is I don't have to walk out the advice I'm giving you. You do,
Oh, that's interesting.
right? Like I don't have to live with the consequences of my advice.
Okay.
You do.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to sit here and tell you to walk away from your marriage when I don't have to live with the fallout from that.
Okay.
Like that's between you and God,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's just so like I will be a sounding board, I will be a listener. I have learned and this is because of my training. Like I've gotten good at learning to ask questions.
Yeah.
Because, with the counseling process, your goal is not to just give advice and instructions and tell people what to do to be better.
Right.
Because ultimately, if you want real change, it needs to come from a place of people having their own aha moment
Yeah.
and recognizing, oh man, and recognizing that there's a problem and that they need to change and being motivated to do it for themselves.
Right.
So my goal, when I had a professor that called it the art of the question,
Hmm.
is to ask questions, thoughtful questions to get people thinking for themselves
Right.
deeper
Yep.
and kind of coming to these conclusions for themselves and these revelations and
Yeah.
these reflections and these aha moments to where it kind of clicks into place and they're like, "Oh, that's where that's coming from. That's
Right.
why that's happening." So that they know why they're reacting that way.
Hmm.
Why they keep having these same like why do you keep getting yourself involved in abusive relationships? These behavior patterns that we repeat over and over. There's a reason we do those things.
Right. Yeah.
So if I can help lead someone to where that's coming from so that you even just know that that's what it is because most people don't.
Yeah.
They just have no idea why they do and say what they do. So that's half the battle.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's easier to figure out like, okay, how do I deal with that now? But like, so my goal is like to ask questions to help lead them to water, so to speak.
Hmm.
Like help them just like I can usually see it pretty clearly.
Yeah.
But my goal is to ask a question to help lead them there. So it's like they're figuring it out for themselves
Yeah.
so that they buy into it.
Right.
I could tell you everything wrong with you, but
I feel like anybody
if
can
you
do
don't
that,
see it for yourself, you're not going to buy in and then you're not going to be motivated to change.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true cuz I like even I know like I mean probably for the past 16 years it's been a reoccurring theme like learn to think for yourself. Learn to think for yourself in a way that you won't be controlled or manipulated by someone else's actions So like I love that you do that, and I think that's probably one of the most crucial things we can do as a society, or just for the sake of having a conversation, is I'm not here to tell you how to think, how to live your life. I'll give advice, but that advice, before that advice, is going to be a lot of questions to get all the information I can to ultimately really challenge you to grow for yourself. And yeah, I love that. That's
Well,
cool.
and because ultimately we need to be able to know how to help ourselves.
Yeah.
Like if you are constantly relying on somebody else to tell you what's wrong with you and tell you how to fix it, like what happens when there's no one around to do that?
Right.
Like, I mean, ultimately you have to be able to have that kind of insight and
Hmm.
self-perception to be able to know yourself better
Yeah.
and do that on your own. And so I'm kind of doing a disservice if I'm just spoon feeding people, here's what's wrong, here's how you fix it.
Yeah.
Um
Do you have any tools,
as far as
like I know some counselors or some people who do this, like they'll have like certain tools in gears of like developing the conversation and where they feel like it's
yeah.
best to go. So
Yeah.
like what are some tools that you can say or talk about for like anybody who would listen to this, all 18 views? Let's go. But for future causes and stuff, like what are some tools
Yeah.
people can like ask themselves to become more aware, cognitively aware, to be like, okay, I'm going to ask myself this question and
Yeah.
process, that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
So one of the ones that like and I apply this to myself, but one of the first ones, and I said this earlier, so I'll go back to it because I think it's the important first question is like, um, I think it's really important. A lot of people aren't comfortable sitting and allowing themselves to feel uncomfortable emotions.
Yeah.
And so, because of that, we don't have very good self awareness.
Hmm.
And so, the for me, the first tool that I will talk to people about is mindfulness, and that's kind of a fad word right now. But essentially, all it is being able to sit with yourself and just be able to identify what am I feeling,
Okay.
what am I feeling emotionally, and just being able to identify it, like what emotions am I actually feeling right now,
Yeah.
and just let yourself sit in that for a minute and let yourself feel it instead of just stuffing it down or
Hmm.
pushing it away and distracting yourself all the time with something else.
Or forcing it on someone else of what
Right.
you're actually
What am I
feeling.
feeling in my body?
Yeah.
Um, this might be TMI, but like with anxiety, for instance, anxiety presents itself with a whole host of actual, like physical symptoms in your body that give you a clue that you're anxious if you pay attention.
Mm.
Right. So I've learned everybody's different, but I've learned for me, when I get really anxious, I get really constipated.
Okay.
So I often,
Well, she wasn't anxious when she came on the show. I just, just making that statement very clear for the viewers.
so,
I also have a diffuser going too, so
but like, so for me, the first thing I'll notice before I notice that I'm anxious about something, before it really registers, man, this is stressing me out. Like,
Mm,
I am not dealing with this well. I'll notice my physical symptoms first. I'll
okay.
notice that my stomach is in knots and it feels a bit queasy. I'll notice that, hey, I've been constipated for a couple days.
Mm,
I only get like that when I'm anxious. Okay, I must be way more stressed about this situation than I realized. I need to do something to help myself deal
okay.
with this. So like if you can like start to learn to actually pay attention to your body and really tune into it, what am I feeling in my body right now?
Yeah.
Are my muscles up here super tense? Am I clenching my jaw all the time? Am I having migraines or headaches more than usual? Am my stomach upset? Am I not sleeping well? Do I not have an appetite? All of those are actual symptoms of mental health things like depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
So if you can learn to actually pay attention to your physical body, it'll give you that self-awareness to know, hey, something deeper is going on here. If
And having that awareness to like once you feel, because like I've been
right.
anxious before, and it typically for me it always is a physical thing. Like my shoulder will start to hurt, or
Mhm.
like that was a weird one. Just recently I was doing something. I was going to cover an event and I got anxious, and I don't know why. Like I cover events all the time to film and stuff, but I'm walking to the event and no joke, it was like sharp pains going through my shoulders. I'm like, what in the world is going on?
Mhm.
And then just bodily, physically being aware to go, I think I'm anxious. Like I
Yeah.
think I'm nervous to do this. And
Yeah.
then I ask myself, why am I nervous to do this? Like,
The
so
art of
that
the question,
yeah.
asking yourself questions. So yeah, so a tool, we call it a body scan. I'll literally just tell them, just sit quietly for a minute and like scan your body, like piece by piece, part
Hmm.
by part. What am I feeling in my body right now?
Hmm.
And then be curious about it. Why am I feeling that? And then, kind of what are my emotions right now? Like, what am I actually feeling? Am I feeling stressed? Am I feeling anxious? Am I feeling pissed? Right.
Hmm.
And then let yourself actually feel it
Feel it.
instead of pushing it away.
Yeah.
Right. And then from there, going, why am I feeling that way?
Hmm.
Why am I feeling that anger? Why are my muscles tense?
Yeah.
What's been going on that's making me feel that way? And so then you can kind of take stock of like what's happening right now that's maybe the source of some of this.
Mm.
And then like another good a good question to ask yourself is like um other after like why am I feeling this way? Like, and I mentioned it before, like, okay, this emotion seems really out of proportion for this situation.
Mhm.
Like, why am I overreacting to this?
Yeah.
What's going on deeper? What is this tapping into? When was the first time that I remember feeling exactly like this in this kind of a situation?
Right.
Because maybe it's tapping into something that happened way back
Mhm.
that we've just never dealt with.
Yeah.
Right. And so, so like that, like I said, that body scan tool, letting yourself feel and sit with the emotions instead of shoving them away. Like, where is this coming from?
Or
Why am I
projecting.
feeling
That
this?
was the word I was thinking.
Yeah.
Projecting that onto
Yeah.
someone
Like,
else.
when was the first time I felt this way?
Yeah.
Like, when do I remember feeling like this before? And then
Mhm.
it might take you back to something from childhood
Yeah.
that you like maybe don't even think about.
Right. Well, do
Um,
you think experience matters? Do you think like your own personal experience helps you grow and develop to become a better person, more mature in your actions, emotions? Cuz like I can remember like the first time going after healing and like childhood trauma and all that, but like the experience over and over and over again of getting like freed up from trauma, I feel like helps that
100%.
brainwave or you just bodily,
A
physically, spiritually.
100%. Like, and I describe it like an onion,
Yeah.
like Shrek,
Yeah, I love
right?
Shrek.
So, like, this is kind of
Hold on,
God's
I have
process.
to say it. Just wait. No, ogres, not like an onion.
Not my gumdrop buttons.
Run, run, run as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man. You're a monster. I'm not the monster here. You are. I could do line for line for that. Well, can I whistle it? No. Can I hum it? All right.
Donkey.
Donkey. I love Shrek. Go
It's a great
watch Shrek.
movie.
You should
It's a
watch Shrek
great movie.
today. All right.
Great
Anyway,
movie.
carry
Yeah.
on. Little rabbit trail.
But like I've just noticed in God's healing journey with me, as like the healing process is ongoing
Yeah.
until the
It's a
day
forever
you
thing.
die.
Yeah.
There's always more layers. Like I feel like where I am now compared to when I was 18, night and day. Night and
Yeah.
day. And I would say for the most part, like I'm pretty healed up from stuff. But like even in the last year, I've seen significant growth. And what I've noticed is that God is gracious and he knows what we can handle.
Mm-hmm.
And like the first 10, 20 years of my healing journey, it was like he would deal with one area. And then when I worked through that and I handled that and things were going good. And then maybe a couple months later, something would pop up.
Mm-hmm.
Something would get triggered. I would have this overreaction to something and I'd be
Right.
curious about why am I overreacting to that? What is that digging up and triggering in me? Oh, okay. Let me go talk to somebody about that. And then we would work through it and it would be good. And then maybe a year later, I would notice that as I went on in my healing process, it would be longer and longer in between those triggers.
Mm.
Maybe it would be a year later, maybe it would be 2 years later because I was pretty healed up.
Mhm.
And then something else would kind of pop up.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, like let's deal with that together, God. And then we'd be good. Right? And so it's like God peels back our trauma, our lives in layers.
Mm.
And he knows what we can handle. He's not going to try and do it all at once because
Right.
our brains, our emotions, we can't handle that.
Right. It'd be too
It'd
intense.
be too intense. So he's going to do what he can do in that moment, in that season, get us to a pretty functioning, healthy place.
Yeah.
And then when he knows it's the right time, he
Peel back a
pokes
layer.
at something else, peels back a layer.
Ogres.
When he's ready for the next,
have
like that's how
layers.
I've seen him do it with me. He's
Yeah.
like slowly peeling back the layers as he sees me able to handle more.
Yeah.
Because he's gracious and he's kind and
Yeah.
he's good and he's not going to give us more than we can handle.
Right.
Um,
How does someone, so like I had a conversation, Kyle and I touched base on this a little bit on like physical health and how that can affect our brain waves and the way we think and we eat and we process and
Mhm.
all of those things. So I know you recently lost some weight, and I'm curious.
203 pounds.
203 pounds. Congratulations. That's awesome. How you feeling? Feel so much better. Like,
Amazing.
yeah.
I used to have high blood pressure. I
Mhm.
was on 3 different medications. I have been off of all those medications for about 2 years now.
Good for you.
I was pre-diabetic.
Wow.
My blood sugar's in normal ranges now. I would get like short of breath with like just basic walking. Like
Mhm.
I'd walk 5 to 10 minutes into work from our parking lot way out in the back, and I'd
Mhm.
be like short of breath.
Wow.
That doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, like just energy level. I was tired all the time. I would get home from work and like wouldn't want to do anything. And I'm an extrovert. I'm a social person. Like I
Yeah.
love being out and doing things with people. And so that was like a big thing, like just recognizing like how much it was impacting that. And like um just like yeah, just not good energy levels. And
Mhm.
all of that is totally different now. So just a much better quality of life in general. Um, but also just like self-esteem and confidence
Mhm.
and just even in those areas, is a huge difference with
Yeah.
that too. Um, and something that I discovered for me, and this is specific to me, but I have a feeling it's probably true for a lot of people that struggle with weight issues. Um, Before I had bariatric surgery, to be clear. And
And what
before,
is bariatric? I know I've heard of it.
yeah,
So what's
so
the
like a gastric bypass. So they
is that where
go
like they
they go
staple or
in and they like there's like a sleeve where they put like a band, and then
okay.
there's an actual surgery where they cut out part of your stomach and they reroute your intestines so that your stomach is smaller, and like
Okay.
so it's an actual major surgery.
Okay.
And that's what I had done. Um but before I had the surgery, I knew that there were areas of like healing and stronghold in my life personally because
Mhm.
of trauma that impacted my weight specifically. And
Okay.
I knew that if I didn't deal with that before surgery and get healing for that, like emotionally and spiritually, the surgery probably would not be successful because I would have the same mindset and the same
Mhm.
bondage going into it afterwards
Yeah.
that would still affect my ability to follow through because the surgery helps, but like I had to completely change my entire lifestyle,
Yeah.
all of my eating habits, exercise, like portion control and vitamins,
Yep.
and like just you have to change everything and you have to stick with that or you will gain the weight back.
Yeah.
And I knew that because of some of the areas that I was bound up in, if I didn't deal with that ahead of time, I would continue to you like fall back on the same habits and defense mechanisms that got me there in the first place.
Yeah.
So I'll be more specific for you. So for me, the trauma that I experienced is when I was 14, I was sexually molested. And because of who it was, um, and because of statements that were made about why they did it,
Hmm.
it was connected to specifically to my appearance and looking just like someone else.
Okay.
And so the mindset, the core belief that I adopted as a result of that was, in order to protect myself from this ever happening again, I can't look like that person.
Ah, that's interesting.
So, and this is completely subconscious. I didn't know that this is something that God revealed to me.
Yeah.
I didn't know at the time that this is what I was doing, but that is why I developed the eating habits that I did. And then I gained weight and gained weight and gained weight so that I no longer looked like that person because of that.
Okay.
Um, and so if I didn't deal with that, I was going to keep the same eating habits.
Yeah.
And then that surgery would be worthless.
Yeah. Sorry, incredibly sorry that that happened. Um, in regards to everything you just said, change changing our habits, I think, is such a crucial role, because it's like it'd be like you taking a car into a dealership and then buying the same exact car with the same mileage, same color, same tires. So like it really doesn't benefit not only you but the people you come in contact with, because you're still the same, you still think the same way, or you still operate the same way. And so I don't know if you know, I've been on carnivore diet.
Yes,
So
you post things
okay,
about
yeah.
the food that you cook, which looks amazing, by the way.
I do love cooking good food. But now this is just like meats and eggs.
Yeah,
Like that's
well, and my diet is specifically high protein. I'm supposed to eat 60 to 80 grams of protein a day.
okay.
So meats and eggs
Yeah.
and dairy,
Yep.
Greek yogurt,
Yeah.
it's also supposed to be low fat, and
Yeah.
dairy can be high
See,
fat.
carnivore is
So
very high fat diet because
yeah,
it
so
changes the
like
sugar
for
and
me, it's to
glucose
try and
and
focus on the lean proteins
yeah.
like turkey and chicken. But I love red meat, so
Yeah.
you know,
I'm a big red meat guy.
but like like low fat cottage cheese and eggs and Greek
Yeah.
yogurt instead of regular yogurt that's full of sugar and
Yeah.
you
But
know
when I started, so I was like 10 days in, something like that. And it's coming to a point where I can't remember how many times I've talked about this to different people, but I was like 10 days in, I was feeling great. I was down a couple pounds already. And then I went to the kitchen and I opened up my cupboards because I'm a pasta guy. I love a
Italian's my
good
favorite, and
pasta.
that has been the hardest thing for me is
Yep.
I will let myself every once in a while have some,
Yeah.
but giving up my carbs, my mashed potatoes, my
Lasagna.
pasta, and my bread. Like
I miss
I had
lasagna.
to make a conscious choice. That is like a every once in a while treat now
Yeah.
because
It's a cheat day for me,
it's
basically. But
like
I had 10 bags of pasta. I had cashews. Like when I buy food, I buy good food. And this ain't your run in the mill Dollar General products
this is like
either.
Trader Joe's.
Yeah, these are like premium ingredients. And so I'm in my kitchen because I was hungry. And I was like, pasta or another pork chop. like like I gotta be committed. So that day I made the choice. I boxed everything up, $400 or $500 worth of food,
Get it out of the
and I
house.
gave it to Andrew. I was like, "You want this?" He's like, "Sure." And he still cracks joke. He's like, "How many cashews do you really eat?" Because I had like 5 or 6 bags. I had a container of all these nuts and everything. So it's like, so now it's actually kind of nice when I go to the grocery store. I can just get 2 bags of stuff, and I just
Yeah.
walk in. I'm like, all right, this is my food for the week. You
Well,
know?
and like my cheat, because if you have like self control issues where if you go to the grocery store, you're still going to put that crap in your cart.
Yeah.
Like, I am a huge fan of online click list
Mm,
grocery shopping because you're not walking through the store and seeing all the stuff in the aisles and
yeah.
like tempted to like
Which
I get online, I click exactly what I need,
yeah.
and for me that helps. Like it
Yeah.
saves me from browsing and window shopping and seeing if it's not right in front of my eyes,
Mm,
I'm not going to search it out online when I order stuff. But if
yeah.
I'm walking by it in the store and it catches my eye, it's,
Yeah.
So that helps me.
Yeah, and well, too, these large corporations, they pay to where their food products go. So I don't know if you knew that. So like if you go into Meijer, if you go into Kroger and you see like the first thing you see is probably like the fruits and vegetables, the companies who it's like they pay so much per slot where their food is going. And that's why you'll see Kroger every once a year they'll do a switch. It's because every 6 months these corporations are dropping where they want their products, where they don't want their products, and they switch everything, and it pisses a lot of people off, including myself. Because once you remember where something's at, you like
Right?
consistency
When
and you
they
want to
remodel the
go.
store and
And
I
then
can't find anything anymore,
and they switch
I get so
everything.
annoyed.
It's because they're moving the chips over here and the drinks over here because they want people to see all of these products. And
Yeah.
so, yeah,
Hmm.
it's very frustrating, and I do not like it.
Yeah.
Go carnivore. Yeah. So in talking about like when you're dealing with because I'm always the type of person that is internally thinking, how did this person get here? Like, how did this person start to believe this thing?
That's
How did
why
they
I
start
love
to
what I
act?
do
And
as a counselor,
from
because
a physical to
it's
mental,
always
like
what you're thinking.
that's always a question. Even from people I've known my whole life to people I meet brand new on job sites and stuff, that's one of the questions that it'll just be like really quick across my brain to go, I
Hmm.
wonder how they got here. And it's not, no, sometimes it's not in a negative way.
No.
It's a positive.
Well, I think that's a positive because I think that helps you have more grace for people.
Yeah.
Is instead of just looking at the behavior and the choices and judging them, it's like recognizing there's a reason they're doing that. There's
Right.
a reason they got there.
Yeah.
Like, and if we can be, again, being curious
Right.
about like, what happened in their life that got them here?
Yeah.
Like, I think that helps you have more grace for people to recognize, like, everyone has a past, everyone has a history.
Hmm.
Um, I would be a totally different person right now if I hadn't been fortunate enough to have an incredibly strong relationship with Christ already when I experienced what I
Hmm.
experienced. And I was only 14, but like it's just such a cool story. Like a couple years before all of that happened, I was only 12, but like God was really, I had some incredible experiences with God that
Hmm.
just had formed this foundation with Him that, like, that's the only reason I am where I am today.
Yeah.
I know that 100%. And I don't take that for granted. But like people who didn't have the benefit of that, like I don't know. Like there's always a reason why people do and say what they do. And
Right.
so to me, it's like being willing to ask yourself that and can help extend some grace to just recognize, you know what, they're not just a jerk to be a jerk.
Right.
Something happened to them,
Right.
right?
I
And it
always
doesn't justify their behavior, but it explains it.
it helps understand it.
Just to give you a little more understanding and grace
Yeah. I
to
was
see beyond the behavior
right.
and to try and see who were they created to be.
Hmm.
You know, where like looking for the if you look for the crap in people, you'll find it every time.
Right.
Like so it's choosing to look for the gold in people,
Right.
choosing to look for the God in people
Hmm.
and who they were meant to be, who they were created and designed to be, and where they can still be,
Hmm.
who they can still be, right? But life happened
Yeah.
and they didn't have either that relationship with God or the support system in their life to help.
Right.
And they,
It always makes me think at one point in my life, like years ago, going through a really, really hard season and life was just being really crappy. I had come to a place, and I know I'm sure I heard it from someone, so I'm not coining this phrase, but I learned and I still operate it from it to this day that it is impossible to be upset with someone if they do not understand what it is they are doing through action, through thought, through how they treat you or how they communicate. It's literally impossible to be upset at anyone or with anyone if they don't understand what it is they're doing. And I think for the longest time, like I would live carelessly. I mean, you knew me when you first met me.
You're an angry punk.
I was an angry punk. And people gave me a lot of grace. They helped me. But it's always those interesting concepts that I know, like every day I operate from that place. Like it's impossible to be upset with someone if they don't understand what it is they're doing. And I feel like people today can choose to live so carelessly, not knowing the repercussions of their actions. And that is scary to me. That tells me that what used to be safe might not feel as safe anymore. And so when you're navigating like between friendships and relationships, because that's where I go. I'll go deep into that concept of going, is this person, I mean, everybody's worth our time, but is this person like worth conversing, investing, and all those things? Um, because I think in a sense we have to protect ourselves too in the matter of
Boundaries are important.
boundaries. Yeah.
Boundaries are huge,
Yeah.
especially if someone doesn't want help
Right.
and doesn't want change. They're not in a place yet where they're ready for that and they acknowledge it's needed. And if they have toxic traits, like you need to create healthy boundaries.
Yeah. How do you do that in your work, creating like healthy boundaries with the clients you have, whether, 15 or 30, if you meet with people? Like
Mhm.
how do you what are some tools that you can share to like healthily approach like, hey, this is a boundary, or just cognitively be aware that like, oh, this is a boundary. I need to protect me first before
Yeah.
I dive into this with that person over
Yeah.
whatever situation.
Yeah. Well, and I think like professional boundaries are a little different than like a boundary in like a friendship relationship or a family
So for
relationship.
professional
But
boundaries,
yeah,
that's
but
what I'm
like
more curious
yeah, but
about.
professional boundaries. So for me, like social media is a big thing.
Hmm.
A lot of counselors won't use their full name or their real name on social media accounts
Just for
because
that.
clients will look you up.
Yeah.
They will look you up and they will try and friend request you
Yeah.
and follow you. And it's that's just a huge professional boundary that it's a slippery slope
Hmm.
because then it crosses the line from a professional client counselor relationship to maybe a little more closer to trying to be your friend. And then
Hmm.
they're getting into your personal life. They're seeing your personal pictures that you're
Hmm.
posting. They're seeing like, if you're commenting things on Facebook, like, they're learning more about your beliefs and your ideologies, and
Hmm.
they're knowing that you went to this concert on the weekend and
Right.
like things that aren't relevant to their care.
Right.
Things that you're like what you're posting on social media is for your friends and family,
Right.
right? You're sharing your personal life with people.
Hmm.
Um, my personal life should not be part of a counseling relationship. There is like something to be said for appropriate use of what we call self disclosure.
Hmm.
Um, but it is never appropriate to trauma dump on a client. It is
Yeah.
never appropriate to, um, you know, like like I will not accept friend requests from clients. I don't post like on Facebook. I don't post the name of my employer for my
Hmm.
counseling job. Um I set all of my profiles to private
Hmm.
so they can't see anything unless I have accepted them as a friend.
And it protects you, just like you
Uh
said, like it
yes.
just protecting in all things.
Yeah.
So
So like that's a big one. And then just being cognizant of like boundaries when it comes to trying to contact you after hours. So
mm,
I also do some like private practice work on the side, some
okay.
telehealth private practice work. And so I use a Google Voice number
Uh,
on my cell
yep.
phone for
Yeah.
business purposes. And so I have clearly established these are my office hours. I will respond to emails and phone calls and texts during these hours.
Hmm.
I will not respond outside of these hours. And that is a boundary I try and stick to. So like, because I work in a school full time during the day,
Hmm.
my private practice clients are in the evening after work. So anywhere from like 4 p.m. My last one is usually starts at 7, so I'll be done at 8.
Okay.
So I have like very clearly spelled out, I will not respond to things. I typically will say after 7 p.m. because if I have a client from 7 to 8, I'm not doing anything else once 8 o'clock hits.
Yeah.
Like I got to get up for work for my full-time day job the next day.
Right.
Like, so like I will say I will not respond to anything later after than 7 p.m. Monday through Thursday
Mhm.
and later than 3 p.m. on Friday. I don't respond on the weekends. If this is an emergency, go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Right.
I think
So,
that's fair. I think so. If
and you have to, because like
yeah,
I had a client who texted me on a Sunday afternoon and even said, "Hey, I know this isn't appropriate, but like this happened and I just really need to know what to do right now."
yeah,
And I'm like, "I'm not going to give you free counseling over text
yeah,
on a Sunday afternoon." And they didn't mean anything you know, I they didn't mean anything bad by it, but
right.
like it's a slippery slope.
It
Like
is
I have a personal life,
right.
I have a private life.
Yeah,
Self-care is a thing.
yeah.
Like
Oh,
I
100%.
need, like, especially when I have 2 jobs, like I need my downtime for my
Yeah,
own mental well-being to be able to be of service to others.
yeah. And I feel like
So like sticking to that, and like I could have very easily, "Oh no, she's saying it's an emergency. Something happened with her husband, like, I need to respond." I'm like,
right.
"No. I, it's a boundary, and if I do it once, she's going to continue to expect it."
Mm-hmm.
Right? So like that's a boundary. I won't share personal information about like what I did on the weekend. I
Mm-hmm.
don't share personal information about like my personal religious beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Typically. Sometimes I get referrals specifically because someone knew me from someone else church related. And so they know I'm a Christian. And that's why they want to see me, because they want a Christian counselor.
Right.
So that's a little different. But I will not specifically talk like, um, I have like my counseling degree is from a seminary, and I did have to take seminary classes as part of my degree.
Okay.
And I've done like, you know, Bible school and things. So I'm
Yeah.
qualified to talk about theology,
Right.
but I keep that's they're seeing me as a mental health counselor,
Yeah.
not as a pastoral counselor or whatever. So I
Right.
try and keep that
Separate.
separate, like digging into theology.
Mm-hmm.
But like when we're talking about, like, if it's a client who's a Christian and we're talking about like truth, I'm going to pull in scripture because that's the ultimate source of truth, and
Yeah.
they also believe that. And
Mm-hmm.
so like, so like, and that's why they came to me, is
Right.
because they want to incorporate God and scripture and Holy Spirit into the counseling
Mm-hmm.
process. So but if the client is not a Christian, I'm not going to bring that into it. I'm not going to push my personal beliefs on them.
Right.
That's a boundary crossing on my part.
Right.
Um, so I guess that's a couple examples of what,
Yeah. And I don't think
I'm not going to show
people.
them pictures of my family. Like if I had a physical office space, I would
Yeah.
not have family pictures on my desk. Like in your professional office, maybe you have a picture of your kids or your spouse on your desk.
Mm.
Counselors, as a rule, don't have any personal pictures in their
Oh,
offices
interesting.
for that reason.
Yeah.
Um,
So it's very protectant. Very.
well, and you have
You
to
know.
remember, like a counseling relationship, they're sharing with you the deepest, darkest parts of their life.
Yeah.
It's very intimate. It's
Yeah.
very emotionally intimate. And so you really have to be so strict on those personal boundaries so that there's not a blurring of the lines,
Right.
especially if I'm a female counselor and I'm counseling a male client.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I don't want any misunderstanding there that there's some kind of romantic thing that shouldn't be.
Right.
That happens all the time.
Yeah.
Like there's actually, to the point where there's ethical and licensure laws about having relationships and sex with clients,
Yeah.
because that's how commonly it happens,
Yeah.
which is horrible.
Yeah.
Because there's a power differential. I have the power in the relationship as the professional counselor,
Right.
and so it's you just have to be very,
That makes
very
sense
careful.
too. And I don't think people fully grasp, and like, because I've thought about this a lot, just the weightiness of emotional intelligence and
That's a
navigating
lot
that
of
with
emotional
someone.
attachment that's built
Yeah.
inherently.
Yeah.
And so you really have to protect and guard that.
Yeah. And I feel like it's a trained muscle too, being able to handle like those weighty conversations and like you said, the deepest secrets or the deepest aspects of someone's life, and protecting that from your end is a crucial role, but it also, when you were explaining, it kind of made me think, oh, so like on top of, being very protective for your personal life and having set boundaries, it makes me think even an unhealthy person could find out information if you didn't protect that and actually begin to manipulate the situation in a session to kind of like
I mean, there's
just
been situations where
bypass,
a
and
client has stalked a counselor. I mean, it can get kind of,
it can get crazy.
yeah.
It can get
And
crazy out
people are
there.
people. And if they're coming to counseling, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
And
And they need
so,
help and they want to,
right.
trust someone to talk about it. And
So you got to protect them from you, but also you have to protect yourself from them.
from them. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's so true. Well, I'm glad you didn't or haven't had any
No.
serious,
No.
things, and again, you're mostly dealing with teenagers, so it's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
teens are teens. I remember being a teen. I do not
I love teens.
I hated
They keep it
them. I
real.
hated my teenage.
Like they don't like put masks on like adults do, and like
Because they're so
they're
emotional.
just
I'm
so
sorry,
raw. They're
teenagers.
so
Like,
raw,
they're very
and
raw.
they're so misunderstood.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's why you're in this profession and
yeah.
I'm not. I'll stick to media and things. Like, I'll capture the emotion for a wedding or, for content for a business, like the, business owner starts crying. It's like, yes, this is what I want. But for a teenager, I'm like, oh man, I remember this note, like, get it away. I do not miss my teenage years. But
Yeah.
I often sometimes feel like today, like I'm 34, and it's funny because sometimes I'll get emotional over things, and it's like, Sam. It's like, why are you crying about this? Like, I was talking on the phone yesterday with someone, and just got a little emotional, and I was like, dang. But I think it's so important for people to realize that emotions are not the enemy.
No.
Like, emotions,
Emotions serve a purpose.
yeah,
This is what I tell my students. Like, emotions are not bad.
right,
God created emotions. They serve a purpose to tell you something.
right,
Anger serves a purpose.
hmm,
It can be a motivator,
right,
right?
100%,
Anxiety serves a purpose. It's warning you of danger. Something's wrong, right? It's what we do with those emotions
hmm,
that's either healthy or unhealthy.
right,
I mean, Jesus got angry.
yeah,
Jesus flipped tables.
yeah,
Jesus struggled with severe like anxiety. Like when he sweat blood in the Garden of Gethsemane, I'd have to Google it, but that there's an actual medical term for that.
oh
It
wow,
is an actual medical condition caused by severe stress and anxiety.
hmm,
Like a documented people will actually sweat blood when they're severely stressed. It's a
wow,
physiological response.
they'll sweat blood.
Yeah. It's a
That's
real
wild.
I could Google it. I don't want to take the time out of your podcast to do it, but Google it. The term for sweating blood, it's a real thing. Like Jesus experienced that, right? Like so if it was evil, Jesus wouldn't have been able to experience it,
Mm,
right? Like it's what we do with it. It's what
it's
we
what
do
we
with
do with
it.
it. How do people become, I guess, I mean, you've outlined some tools and you've outlined like some experiences for people to really take control over their emotions, because I think ultimately that's everybody's goal, to be cognitively aware what we're feeling, when we're feeling it, and why we're feeling
Yeah.
it. That's one thing that like I've just always been fascinated by, to like be so good. Like that would be like the first question I would ask myself: why is this happening? And I feel like we project that question onto other people, and we don't project it enough onto ourselves. So how do people, I guess it just, also makes me think of like experiences. Like, you go through so many experiences, and it's literally just like a retraining of your brain, a rewiring of,
It is.
what's structured. And
It's practice.
and like I've even,
Rewiring is practice.
yeah,
I liken it to like if you think of like in the 1800s, the wagons, the stagecoach wagons that
mhm,
went out west, they all followed the same path out there. And so there's the two dirt tracks, the well-worn grooves
yep,
that as long as the wagon wheels stay in the groove, you're fine. If you kind of get off on the edge,
Ohio
right? So
roads,
that's what happens in your brain
yeah,
when you continue to engage in these patterns of behavior and in these same mindsets and thought
the
patterns. It forms a
grooves
groove,
are created.
and then you get stuck.
Hmm.
And so, but it is possible to get out of the groove and form those new neural pathways to change, But it does take effort. It does take work. It
Yeah.
takes repetition, practice and repetition.
I
Um,
think it was in the book from Dr. Caroline Leaf. She touches base on that. Cuz the one I was reading or just like skimming through is it's all about the brain, and I think I remember reading something about like once we do so many actions, it for physical. Like this isn't just some
it physically
analogy. It
forms a new
physically
groove.
forms a groove in your brain.
Yeah.
And that's crazy to think about. It's crazy good and it's just super
Mm,
exciting to think about that.
yeah.
Um yeah, and I think in the terms of going through emotional intelligence, I
Mm,
think for me it's always been, and I'd never heard that term before until a few years ago, but it's like there is an emotional
hmm
intelligence that people can tap into and become more aware of. And so when you're talking with people, it could be in public or profession, like do you ever look and ask internally, like ask like I wonder where their emotional intelligence lies
Oh,
for them?
always.
Like, and what's that
And you
like?
can often tell, like, I have clients who are super self aware and
Mm,
super insightful. And the ones that are, it makes my job easier because they're able to articulate, like, oh man, like I realized when I did this, it's because of this. And
right.
um, I have other clients that, like, you have to lead them a little more.
Mm,
Like they're not making the connections between this response and this event.
mm-hmm.
So I'll give you an example. I have a client. She's in her residency,
Okay.
um, and she's got some childhood trauma history. But she's also had, like, so she's in this rotation of her residency currently that she's done a couple times before, and she considers it her weakest area,
Okay.
like just her weakest skill set.
Mm,
And so whenever she is in that rotation, she gets really anxious and really stressed. And she's had a couple bad experiences in the past in that rotation that contribute to that.
okay.
So she started this new residency rotation about 8 weeks ago. She's almost done with it. And she was commenting to me, man, like that first week that I was in this rotation, like I just had such a hard time. I couldn't focus. I had a hard time concentrating. I was making stupid mistakes and just not paying close attention to detail like I normally would. And I just couldn't get locked in.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, you realize those are all what we call executive functioning tasks. There's
Executive functioning tasks.
a part of our brain that controls our executive functioning, memory, learning,
Okay.
task initiation, being able to start things and then finish what you start. Things like that. When when our when our fight, flight, freeze response gets triggered
Mm-hmm.
with stress and anxiety, um, it releases adrenaline, it releases cortisol. You're amped up,
Yeah.
fight, flight, um, until you can get your the emotion regulation center in your brain. There's like different areas. So you've got like your brain stem, which is like your basic life functions,
Mm-hmm.
your sleep cycle, your breathing,
Okay.
your emotion regulation center is like up here a little more.
Okay.
And then the executive functioning, that higher level thinking, problem solving, critical thinking, memory, it's all up here.
Okay.
If your emotions are dysregulated here,
Mm-hmm.
you can't access the higher levels of your brain to actually be able to problem solve and think clearly. So that's why when people are like super overwhelmed emotionally, they make
Mm-hmm.
stupid decisions because instead of taking the time to regulate themselves so that they can then activate that part of
Mm-hmm.
their brain, they just react,
Yeah.
right? So because of her past experiences that were traumatic to her in
Mm-hmm.
that rotation, it triggers that fight, flight, freeze, that anxiety mode in her whenever she goes into that rotation. And then, therefore, those higher level functioning things kind of shut down.
Okay.
And then she has trouble with focus and attention. She wasn't connecting those dots with the fact that she was having those symptoms because she was having anxiety because of being in that rotation because of the bad performance reviews she got before.
Ah, okay.
So like I had to like help ask, point things out to help her connect those dots.
Yeah.
To me, somebody who has pretty decent emotional intelligence is usually able to connect those dots pretty well for themselves
Yeah.
because they're in tune with their emotions and they're more sensitive and aware of those things.
Yeah.
There's another aspect of emotional intelligence where you're good at reading the room.
Mm-hmm.
You're good at reading other people's emotions
Mm-hmm.
and kind of recognizing the why behind their emotional responses. And you're good at kind of reading the vibe in the room. And if there's tension between groups of people and, the vibe is off, you can usually sense that.
Yeah.
And then that triggers you to like, okay, I'm going to adjust myself and how I present myself in this room to maybe help diffuse some of this tension or
Yeah.
at least not contribute to it.
Yeah.
Right. So I think there's those couple different aspects to emotional intelligence of one being able to recognize and read other people's, but also just being self-aware of your own
Mm-hmm.
and kind of your own triggers and your own why behind what you do and
Mm-hmm.
why you do it.
Yeah. What'd you call this? What's this called? The back part of the brain? The
So there's like the prefrontal cortex,
pre
which is where like all like the decision making and the
Okay.
executive functioning stuff is, and then the back part is like your emotion regulation.
Okay. So if somebody struggles with like I'm gonna get like all technical on you now because I'm getting smart, y'all. If somebody who has, say, intense emotional regulation that have a really hard time accessing the executive part of the brain, what are tools or languages you can use to calm this down so that you
Yeah.
can access
So there's all kinds of
the front?
coping skills for regulating emotions.
What was
A
it?
wide coping
Oh,
skills, we
coping
call them,
skills.
to regulate emotions. They could range anywhere from activities like self soothing.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, when you're a baby or when you're a little kid, you self soothe by you've got a blankie,
Mm,
you snuggle with it, right? You've got a passy, you suck on it.
mm,
Your parent maybe holds you, right? So
mm.
you're kind of wrapped up in someone's arms, or like they swaddle babies nice and tight,
Yeah, because that pressure.
right? That tactile, like it mimics the womb. They feel safe, right?
Yeah.
Or your parent maybe holds you and rocks you in the rocking chair to get you to sleep. That rocking motion.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all like soothing mechanisms.
Okay.
And so as adults, self-soothing is going to look different but similar. So if you think of like your five senses, sight, taste, touch, smell, sound,
Mm,
right? So sight things that might be soothing, self-soothing, maybe watching your favorite movie.
mm,
If you're feeling kind of depressed and down, watching a funny movie, something that makes you laugh,
mm-hmm.
or a favorite TV show, or just YouTube videos or TikTok, like something that's just light and funny.
Podcast Bears Don't Fly.
Or
Subscribe
maybe
and follow.
it's just a good distraction.
Yeah.
Like when you get engrossed in something, you're in another world. Your mind's not on everything that's making you
Whatever is
feel like
happening
crap in the
here.
first place.
Yeah.
So it's either just a really good distraction or B, kind of a self soothe,
Okay.
right? Maybe like scrolling through pictures,
Yeah.
fun memories, people that you love. It makes you feel good. That's
Yeah.
soothing, right? If you think about sound, your favorite music, or like for me, worship music,
Mm-hmm.
something that's soothing, that's going to bring peace, that's going to bring calm, right? Or like I have an app on my phone that has sounds. So like
Yeah.
nature sounds, the
Or
sound of
the
the ocean,
rain
the sound
and
of rain,
yeah.
right? That's soothing to me. The sound of a crackling fire.
Yeah.
Um, Smells, scented candles, incense,
Mm,
essential oils, a cologne or a perfume that is a scent that reminds you of someone that you love or that you're close to. It's a happy memory.
mm-hmm.
That can be soothing. Cuddling up with like a warm blanket, your favorite sweatshirt,
Yeah.
cuddling up with a pet, petting your pet, taking your pet on a walk. Those are all like a hot shower, a hot bubble bath,
Mm-hmm.
right? Those are soothing. If you think about taste, comfort foods, there's a reason we call them comfort foods.
Yeah. You make us feel
Right?
comfortable.
It's soothing.
Yeah.
So like those self-soothing things, those are coping skills that will help regulate you and bring calm down.
Okay.
Or just things that are good distractions, reading a book, hanging out with friends, hanging out with family, having a game night, doing puzzles,
Yeah.
right? Just fun hobbies, fun activities that you enjoy that make you feel happy, that release endorphins, distract you from all the crap,
Yeah.
right? There's also what we call grounding techniques, which are things that, like, especially with like trauma or severe anxiety or like just overwhelming emotion,
Mm.
um, can kind of bring you back into the moment,
Mm.
help ground you in the present. A lot of times, especially with anxiety and trauma, you're either stuck in the past, remembering and thinking about all the bad stuff that happened,
Right.
or you're stuck in the future, freaking out about all the what ifs that may
Yeah.
or may not happen.
Yeah.
So if you can get out of your head and stop overthinking and just be fully present in the moment where
Yeah.
you're fine, you're safe, we're okay, that can help regulate you.
Okay.
And so that's what like mindfulness and grounding techniques are all about.
And when you
Is
say,
just getting you in the moment.
yeah, and when you say grounding
So
techniques, one of
yeah,
them
so
is
the
like,
five senses technique is a really,
yeah.
really common one. So like 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you hear, 2 things you smell, something you taste.
Oh, okay. I
So
never heard that before.
yeah, so your brain relies on your sensory input
Mm-hmm.
to tell it whether you're in danger or not, and that
Right.
triggers the fight, flight, freeze response.
Yeah.
So your senses can also tell your brain, "Hey, we're cool, we're safe.
It's
Shut
all
all
good
that
now.
off."
Yeah.
So that's why, like, when someone's having a panic attack or is really severely triggered by trauma, and it's like your brain is offline, you're overwhelmed, you can't think, being able to ground yourself in the moment kind of pulls you back out of like those bad flashbacks of what happened in the
Mm.
past, and gets you back in the moment
It's
where you
being
know that you're
in,
safe.
yeah.
I'm safe.
Okay.
I'm not there. I'm here. I'm now. I'm safe.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's this just the sensory input. Like right now in the present, I see that blue thing and that blue thing and that blue thing. That's my
Mm.
favorite color. So
Okay.
I look for blue things.
Hey,
Right?
navy blue
Like
wall. Let's
physically,
go.
I'm not back when that bad thing happened. I'm
Mm-hmm.
here right now. So I can feel my sweater and it's soft.
Mm-hmm.
Right? My protein shake is still cold.
Yeah.
Right? My jacket is kind of heavy, right?
Okay.
So just noticing texture, temperature, size, weight, and just that sensory input, right?
Okay.
Grounds you in the minute. Right now here in the room, I smell these 3 different smells,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Well, I hope they're good smells.
But that's the idea.
Yeah.
Or like sticking your hands under really cold water. That cold, that
Mm.
sensory, it's like a shock to the system,
Yeah.
right? Holding a cold ice cube, right? Or like I'll often wear like a hairband on my wrist. I'll
Mm-hmm.
snap it. That
Just to
snap,
feel
that
that.
tactile, like snap, snap,
Okay.
snap. It's like that pinch that like puts you back in your body,
Okay.
right? Playing with fidgets. That's why a lot of people like you'll see people tapping.
Yeah.
There's actually science behind what we call alternating reciprocal movements.
Okay.
So you've got the right and left hemisphere of your brain,
Yeah.
2 different sides of your brain. The right side of your brain controls the left side of your body.
Okay.
The left side controls the right side. So that's why when someone has a stroke, it only affects one side of the body. So if their left side is affected, that means the stroke was in the right side of the brain, right?
That's
So your
fascinating.
brain, in order to get the 2 hemispheres talking together and
Yeah.
to fully process all the emotions and the traumatic events, right? You got to get it talking.
Okay.
Got to work together at the same time. So these like when you walk, that's why taking a walk is very calming for people. It actually
Mhm.
helps them calm down because you're swinging your arms alternating, you're
And
swinging your
it's
legs
hitting
alternating.
both right and left and
It's hitting
sides of the
both,
brain.
right? Little kids, I'll teach them butterfly taps.
Okay.
You can also do like just like varying amounts of pressure just across both sides of the body.
And this is all just to
Taps
get you back
to regulate,
aware.
to regulate your emotions.
to get
Yeah,
back
to
in
get your
that
brain to
moment.
calm down, to get your body to calm down. Yep. So those are just deep breathing.
Yeah.
Because
Which
when,
I
especially
started
with
doing that.
anxiety, it
Holy
affects
cow.
your cardiac system, your heart,
Yeah.
right? It affects your lungs, your respiratory system. You can't get deep breaths. You feel like you're gasping. You feel like you're choking. You've got a weight on your chest, right? It affects your brain, right? People will feel when they're having a panic attack, when they're really anxious, they'll like, it's like that fuzzy feeling,
Yeah.
right? They don't feel like they're all there. They're not getting enough oxygen to their brain because their lungs aren't working because you're
Mm,
gasping for breath,
yeah.
right? So deep breathing regulates all three of those body systems, helps bring everything back down,
Okay.
right? Meditation,
Yeah.
right? I'll meditate to worship music.
Yeah.
I'll meditate on a passage of scripture. This is my other hot take. Just because meditation may be commonly associated with New Age and Eastern religion
Mm,
does not mean it's bad.
right. No, I
Like,
I agree with that.
adapt it to meditate to worship music, meditate to scripture. Like,
I've
and I know
actually
that's a
done
hot
yoga.
take because I know there's the whole thing about yoga and like,
Namaste.
right?
You know.
So anyway, that's another hot take
So
for you. But
I know I started
so all of those
doing.
things will regulate your emotions and your physiological body responses to the emotions
Yeah.
to bring calm so that then you can actually be clear enough headed to start looking at, why am I feeling this way?
I got you.
What are my thought patterns that are feeding these emotions?
Yeah.
Where did those thought patterns come from?
Hmm.
Right? You're not going to be able to process any of that until you get your emotions under control first.
Right.
It's just not going to happen.
Right. Yeah. We when I get together with the bros every 2 weeks, we'll start off doing what I think he calls it the 5-5 method.
Mm.
We'll do 5
5 in, hold for 5, 5 out.
5 out, breathe
Mhm.
for 5, and we'll do that 5 times. And I'll tell every single time I'm like,
It works.
like it actually makes my body re-gasp for air, and I feel better when I do it.
Mhm.
So like the 5-5 method also works. And
There's so many different methods of deep breathing.
oh yeah,
but
I'm sure.
the key is slow because you're
Yeah.
trying to slow down your heart rate. You're trying to slow down and deepen your breathing.
Hmm.
So you can't just do right.
Right.
Like, slow in through the nose, slow out through the mouth.
Now I do have a weird question,
Yeah.
but it made me think doing all these techniques. Does the brown bag actually work? When you go,
Like,
I never understood that because I don't want to breathe
Don't-
my own breath
don't
in a
brown
brown
bag
bag.
it. No.
But like, because I'm mainly from Hollywood movies
Right.
is where you get that from. And, people who
No.
breathe in brown bags, I'm thinking that's
No.
not even fresh oxygen.
I think
like
that makes people hyperventilate more, to be honest.
breathing in a bag in a
I think so.
closed. I think so. I mean, I can agree with you. I just never understood it.
Mhm.
It's like I would
It's not
rather
necessary for sure.
I would rather breathe in fresh
Who
air.
wants to re-breathe
than-
in all that carbon dioxide?
Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah, I don't know.
No.
Not me. That's that's for sure. That's for sure. Yeah, I like that. Well, this has been incredibly fun. Is there anything else you want to touch base on or share or
I think so.
professional insight? Is there anything? So I don't know, in your line of work with your side hustle or side gig or whatever you call it, is
Mhm.
there? Do you want people to know where to
Sure.
find you at? So talk,
Sure.
share.
I
I'm
am-
always up
I
for
am-
promoting. So
I am taking new clients, a couple new clients. So it's a telehealth private practice. So it's online only.
okay,
So if you prefer in person, it's not for you. So it's all video through your computer. It's called Hold Space Counseling.
hold space.
Hold Space Counseling. The website is holdspacecounseling.com. And you can like request me. There's other counselors too, but so you do the referral right through the website. There's a list on the website of all the private insurances that we take. We do take insurance.
Oh, okay.
It's also self-pay if they need self-pay or
Okay.
prefer self-pay.
And what's
yeah.
the online? Is it Zoom? Is it Google Meet?
It's through.
Like-
It's actually through an electronic medical record platform.
Oh, okay.
So you create like a patient portal, like my chart, and you do it all through the portal.
Oh, okay. I'm sure that makes it
Yes.
easier in the long run. Like
Yes.
instead of having to
Yeah.
resend links and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So.
So you can go through the website and email me. You can email me at shannonmiller@holdspacecounseling.com. My Google Voice number is also on the website.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's evening hours, like 4 to I usually take the last client at 7. So like 4, 5, 6, 7, couple evenings a week. I have done Sunday nights in the past, but I prefer, just since I have a full-time day job, I prefer to have a
You
solid,
gotta have space for yourself.
I need,
like-
yeah, I need self-care.
Yeah.
But like weekends, which is really helpful for a lot of people with work schedules and
right.
stuff.
And if they have kids.
And
that whole
because
thing.
it's telehealth, I can see anyone in the state of Ohio. It's not limited to our geographical region.
Or county, like
Yeah,
the
because
whole
it's
state of
telehealth.
Ohio,
Whole
people.
state. If you live in
That's very
Ohio,
cool.
if you are physically present in Ohio for our counseling sessions, I can see you
Online.
online.
Yeah,
So,
that's cool.
yeah.
Well, this has been super helpful, and I'm glad I know more about the brain than I did 2 hours ago. So that's super exciting. Yeah. So don't forget to subscribe, follow, like, share, comment. It's now on
Yeah.
Spotify, Bears Don't Fly, and YouTube to watch the full video. And yeah, all socials, Bears Don't Fly. Good having you. Awesome.